I like dolls, but I love books. Okay, I love dolls too. You got me. Hello out there, all you spooky little doll-loving book nerds, and welcome to my channel, where my dolls and I sit and talk about books. Sometimes it's Barbie, sometimes it's ILY, sometimes it's Monster High, sometimes it's a Disney princess, sometimes it's Must I Carry On? I feel like you kind of get the point. Basically, my dolls and I have our own little book club. My name is Daniel, and I am the Barbie Book Boy. All right, you guys, we are smack in the middle of spooky season. This is not a drill. It is time for us to hocus focus. And I've got just the thing to help us get to that frightening finish line. Is it maybe a monster under my bed? No. Or perhaps a skeleton in my closet? Not today, Satan. It's a book. You probably already guessed that. Anyway, today I will be talking about The First Witch of Boston by Andrea Catalano. And I just so happen to know a gal who has first-hand experience with puritanical Massachusetts. And that plastic pal is none other than the Disney ILY Forever Hocus Pocus doll. Yo, I gotta say, Jax Pacific really nailed the assignment with this one. She is absolute Disney-bounding perfection. I am loving the Winifred Sanderson vibes with this giant red hair. She's dressed from her adorned head down to her clunky clogs for a night of Salem bewitchery and running amok.
Amok! Amok, 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 amok. Oh, really, just one child.
And she just wants you to know that she's seen the complaints on the internet about her clogs. And she states that she will not be addressing any questions at this time. But trust me when I say that she is more than qualified on the subject of puritanical Massachusetts. Speaking of, I should probably mention a few trigger warnings. Since this is a book that takes place in puritanical New England, you can expect to read about all of the suffering and all of the tragedies that people of that time commonly experienced. Things like illness and child death and SA, just to name a few. So be warned. So let's get into it. The year is 1646, a terrifying time of heightened suspicions and bad fashion. Seriously? Now? Ugh, fine. Do you feel better? It was a time when me and my friend here definitely would not have made it to adulthood. Those wacky Puritans would have no doubt interpreted my doll collection as being evil poppets intended for tools of witchcraft. But married couple Thomas and Margaret Jones are willing to give Boston the benefit of the doubt. Guys, side note, I wanted to show you that her boots totally have adorable little brooms etched onto their sides. Also, I would be completely remiss if I didn't point out that Thackeray Binks was on her skirt. How cute is that? And you guys, you have to check out her little Hocus Pocus cauldron purse. Sorry, back to the book. So Thomas and Margaret flee their homeland of England. And head across the pond to start a new life in Massachusetts. Thomas is just like a simple, hardworking man of his time. And Margaret is, well, she's a pistol. She's a feisty firecracker of quick wit and no nonsense. But also, she's a well-trained healer. And even though her and Thomas are basically opposites, they are deeply in love and have been for decades. And so far, the move seems to have done them some good, because Margaret is finally pregnant after years of trying and failing. But 1646 Massachusetts is not a place where happiness lives for very long. Because Puritans are shady. Any little perceived slight or arbitrarily defined infraction, and you'll find yourself dancing a gallows jig in front of the whole town. Which for someone like Margaret is like a constant threat. And sure enough, her free way of speaking and her medicinal practice eventually rankles the ire of these puritanical sticks in the mud. See, Margaret's kind of the perfect target for everybody else's tragedies. Puritans were like really naive about science and medicine. Everything was the devil. Stub your toe and you can accuse the toothless hag across the street of being Satan's concubine, rather than blaming your own clumsiness on those awful buckled shoes. Religious hysteria was the norm, and totally isn't a thing today. Except, anyway, things start going wrong for Margaret. And everything in her life, from her medical practice to her family, starts to crumble around her. And that's basically the story of The First Witch of Boston by Andrea Catalano. So what are my thoughts? No. Well, this book was inspired by actual events. We know how it turns out, okay? Because things only ever turned out one way for smart, free-thinking women of those times. Have you not been paying attention? But really, it's the journey that makes this book special. It's the strongly imagined history of this real puritanical woman and her husband that tugs at your heartstrings. Margaret's ordeal predates the Salem witch trials by over 40 years, so her story isn't as widely known, but the author does a fantastic job of pulling us in and forcing us to singularly focus in on the witch hysteria that would eventually just explode in the Massachusetts region. This book's reimagining of real historical context is slightly reminiscent of The Crucible by Arthur Miller, especially with the kind of old-time writing style that's balanced masterfully throughout this book. But this being a full-length novel, I think it actually takes us deeper into the tragedy and terror of puritanical Massachusetts, which gives the book an emotional depth that, I'm not gonna lie, maybe drew a tear or two from me. Okay, fine, I cried, okay. But this is a deeply personal story. And even though the subject of the witch hysteria of puritanical New England has been written about before, it's the daily lives and relationships of these characters that matter. Even if it hadn't been based on real events, the quality of the writing was such that it would have had just as strong of an emotional gut punch. We want to intervene on Margaret's behalf. We want to help her navigate Puritan society. And we're forced to frantically watch as her husband desperately tries to help her, to the point that he indulges in a little bit of victim blaming. But ultimately, the things that keep getting her in trouble are the things that he actually loves about her, But still, he understands the almost defeatism that they need to embrace if they're to survive the Puritans. He can see what's coming, but Margaret just isn't able or willing to concede who or what she is. And frankly, the injustice of it all is just so painful. So there you have it, our thoughts on The First Witch of Boston by Andrea Catalano. A book where superstition meets hope. An intimate love story set in an impossible time. A Puritan pickle of a situation for poor Margaret Jones. Thank you so much for watching. My dolls and I are going to be doing these weekly videos, so if this is your thing, then stay tuned. Oh, and while you're here, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Leave a comment for ILY. Don't worry, she's a safe space for cunning women everywhere. Tell her all your witchy secrets. Rant and rave to her about your hatred of Puritan hysteria. Do you think you would have ended up being tried as a witch in Puritan times?